Hi, I'm Todd Nauck. Welcome to my YouTube channel. So today we'll be continuing work on this Young Justice sketch cover. Today we'll be working on inks for Robin, the Tim Drake Robin, aka the third Robin, and he was pretty much the leader of Young Justice for much of the series. I'll be sharing my tips and tricks to inking and my approach to inking, and answering some of the questions that you have submitted on the different social media platforms, and all the links to all my social media are listed in the video description below. And I'll also have links to parts 1 and 2 of this video series in case you missed the sketch stage or the inks for impulse stage that I posted recently. So without further ado, let's get to inking Robin. Okay, so here we have the current state of this sketch cover, and we're gonna focus in on Robin. Let me get zoomed in here a little bit, and so we can get some better detail here, better view of the detail. I'll try to keep this in camera frame. Coming in with my Unicruatoga 0.3 HB lead mechanical pencil. For that, like I did with Impulse, I need that finer detail. I need those details to be a little more crisp for me to make sure I'm inking just the right lines. And I want to make sure that I have those facial details fleshed out a little bit more. So that's what I'm going to do right now. Just kind of get a little more shape of the nose, a little more shape of his kind of I'm serious kind of grimace, and as well as the hairline here. Going to get that a little more fleshed out as well. Kind of that 90s spiky hairstyle going on. So get that kind of roughed in. Just the basic shapes. Because Tim's hair is pretty much black, I'm gonna have a big chunk of black area for the hair, and then there'll be towards the top of the hair, as you see, there'll be a separation. That's where I'll fill in with color later on. So let's see, I'm gonna switch the side of that little hair curl, not quite a spit curl, but Superboy has the spit curl that makes that S. There's just that one little bit of hair that kind of flips down over his forehead. Chose to flip the angle there. I felt it utilize the space of his forehead a little bit better. Tightening up the collar here, just kind of double checking my math. I call it double checking my math. Make sure I have my art equation a little better, a little more accurate, so that when I go in with the inks, it's less confusing. Again, this is still very rough for me for pencils, and I should try doing a more tight pencil art video at some point. So I will do that. If y'all would like to see me do a tight pencil art video, please leave a comment in the video description. Let me know what you'd like to see, and I'll see what I can do to accommodate. So while I tighten up some of Tim's detail lines here, I will let's see if I can tackle a question. Let's see, someone posted, do you have some art tips for beginners or for those who want to dedicate themselves to drawing? And I would say that's kind of a big question. And not a bad question, it's just a big question. It's kind of challenging for me to answer, so I want to answer it in just the right way. Really, I think the part that kind of makes it challenging for me is, what is the art goals? I don't know what this person's specific art goals are here in this question. So I need to kind of consider that. And I would say, if because it's a spectrum, do you want to draw for fun or do you want to draw for a career? There's going to be different approaches. If you're just drawing for fun, for a hobby, just draw whenever you feel like it would be fun for you to do. You know, whenever you feel like you have some hobby time, then go for it and draw and just enjoy drawing, enjoy putting marks on paper. You know, that's kind of like basic tier, just doing it sheerly for the fun of just kind of killing some time. Doodling, you know, like I used to doodle all the time in high school on my the sides of my notes. Just fill those up. I wish I still had those. I just fill that up with all sorts of doodles and drawing just because I love putting marks down on paper. Even when I should have been focusing a little bit more on my schoolwork. But if you're wanting to pursue this as maybe more of a career to some degree, or some sort of side business, you'll want to dedicate more time to it. And I'd say if you want to be a comic book artist, and that's where I'm going to come from right now, because that's my experience, so I'm going to speak from this place now, is if you want to do it as a comic book career, draw, I want to say every day if you can. Draw every day. To whatever time you have that day, draw. Whether it's 5 minutes or 5 hours, draw. Because if you make it into the industry, if you get hired, you will be drawing a full workday, at least maybe 5 days a week, maybe more, depending on the deadline. So you kind of got to be ready for that. And so every time you draw is kind of training, building up the muscles, not just of your hands, not just of your eyes and your brain and your arm and shoulder. You're not just training that, but you're kind of getting that creative fortitude built up, being ready to problem solve, puzzle build, world build, character design, and creating an environment, a world for the characters to be in, to act in, and to occupy. So you want to be able to be drawing every day. And from there, start focusing on the things you need to learn, whether it be anatomy, gestures, and gestures are the way the figures move, like the gestures here of these characters on this illustration I'm doing, how impulses, kind of the body language, let's call it the body language, is maybe a fun way to say that. You'll want to focus on things like that. Lighting. You'll want to focus on drawing backgrounds, drawing them in perspective, and of course, as comic book artists, panel-to-panel storytelling, and that is like learning a language. So the sooner you can start trying that, the sooner you can start becoming more adept, being more versatile, being more familiar with how to do that. I mentioned in 2 videos back, in the sketch video for this one, someone asked about art books. I'll mention it again. Look into any how to draw comics book, whether it be How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way, DC has a book, or any even generic how to draw comics books. They're all going to teach you the basics, and that's the place you need to start. Learn the basics and build from there. So really, that's my tip, some of my tips for a person who wants to pursue art to whatever degree, and continue to watch videos on YouTube, tutorials as well, and learn from those of us who are a little further down the road in the art journey than where you're at, and learn from what we're sharing here online, and hopefully it is a benefit to you. So thank you so much for the question. So here we are back with Tim. We've now started in on the inks, and if you saw my impulse video, you saw that I'm doing these in color hold, kind of colored line art to give it kind of the animated look. And for Tim's bow staff here, I'm using my triangle to get a nice, clean, straight line. This is just one of my drafting tools. It's got a beveled edge. You want to make sure you get any tool like this, like a French curve or a triangle here. You want to make sure it has a beveled edge, and that means there's like this little gap. It's hard to see here in this video, but there's like this little teeny tiny kind of, it's called a bevel. I can't think of another word, but maybe gap is the way I'll go there. But it keeps the ink from seeping under the plastic and then smearing on your art. So you want to make sure it's not just a completely flat, but you want to make sure you buy one that has a beveled, B-E-V-E-L, maybe 2 L's, L-E-D. I might get knocked out of the spelling bee for spelling that one there, but beveled edge. If you start with B-E-V, you'll get there. A beveled edge so that you don't, if you're going to ink with it, you don't get that ink bleed under. So I'm using my drafting tools, which are very important in drawing comics. We use them all the time, especially for backgrounds, buildings, and anything that needs a hard, straight edge. And so I'm putting in the staff, which is kind of like could be more of a like metallic or almost silver, and you'll see a secondary line there towards the bottom of the staff. That's kind of the shadow, kind of reflecting the horizon sort of line. Now I've switched over to a green, and oh yeah, I'd mentioned the Arteza Iconic pens that I'm using. So this is the pack here. 48 colored pens, really nice, a good quality marker pen set for a decent price. So the good people at Arteza hooked me up with this, and I use it quite regularly. Anytime you see me do an illustration that has like any commission piece or anything I put on my Instagram or other social media, when I post those type of images, if it's got a lot of colors in the line work, more than likely I used quite a few of these, along with my Pigma Micron pens, which I used for the brown Robin's skin tone. So now I'm using a green Arteza pen here for inking all the green parts of Tim's costume, his mask, his gloves, his sleeves, his pants. This is the marker that I'm using. It's a nice dark shade of green. Just as I said with Impulse, whatever color this is going to be colored in, when we do the color stage, I'm wanting to always use, or as more often than not, as much as possible, use a darker shade. So I want a dark green here, not a traditional lighter or regular shade of green, because then when I come in with the colors, it will make I'll make all the line art kind of disappear. It'll blend in too much with the colors and it'll look too flat. So I want to really have that line art pop. So, and I'm also keeping in mind my line weights. We discuss this anytime I do inking because it's a big part of it. A big part of inking is we're creating that depth. Foreground, middle ground, background. And the thicker the line, the closer to the foreground. The thinner the line, the further back away. So, it's going to be, even as my hand gets smaller, those lines are going to be thinner than this mug right here. I'm going to have thicker lines, at least here on the main contours, maybe thinner lines here in the details of the face. But as we move further back, those contour lines are going to get thinner and thinner to a degree. It's not like a hard, fast rule. It's like it'd be super thick and super thin. It might be, it might not be. It's experimentation and learning as we go. So here with Tim, I'm as you see, like here with his fist holding the bow staff, I have a thicker line here on the fingers and that thumb. So that thumb is popping from his sleeve. If that thumb was the same line weight as his sleeve, which is just a little bit further back, not a way farther back, but from here to here, if these were the same line weight, it'd kind of blend all in. The viewer eye, would have a difficult time figuring out the depth there. So that's what I'm trying to communicate, is the depth. So whatever is in the foreground, you want a bit of a thicker line than things that are following behind it, even if it's just by a minuscule bit. Now the nice thing about thicker lines is you don't have to go super thick right out of the gate. You can start with your initial, what you believe to be the proper thickness, and as you go, if you realize, this thing in the foreground's kind of blending in too much with the middle ground or background, beef up that line, make it thicker, add another layer to it. I do it all the time. In my comic work, my professional work, comic covers, pages, commission style pieces, it's always something that's in my mind. It's kind of like, I like it to refer to it like when you get a haircut, they say, is this short enough or do you want me to go shorter? Because they can take more hair off, they just can't put more hair back on. And trust me, as you get older, you wish they could. So it's okay to start thinner and then beef up that thickness, so that you can get that level of depth and dimension that you're looking for. So here, as we work through inking Tim's legs, they're falling behind those speed lines I put down for Impulse. I left that gap, if you remember from the last video, I left gaps in Bart's speed line so that we could see more of Tim behind him. Bart is Impulse's real name, Bartholomew Allen, grandson of Barry Allen, the second Flash. If we consider Jay Garrick the Golden Age Flash, the first Flash, which I do. These are the layering of the figures in the art. Now the Impulse's lightning bolts have a variation of thick and thin, trying to create a texture, kind of an electric kinetic sort of texture, but there's a thick and thin. Robin's lines are still might be a little bit thicker in certain places, even though they're one step towards the middle ground. But here's the thing. The lightning bolt is more of like an electrical effect, so it doesn't necessarily have to be as thick of a line. It's more of an ethereal sort of thing, much like the cloud of dust below Impulse as well. Now I can make those electrical lightning bolt lines thicker if I wanted to, but I chose to keep them a little thinner because of that, wanting that ethereal look. Ethereal is the best way I can think of it, but kind of that natural, like it's a force of nature sort of thing. I didn't want the lightning bolts to be so much of a in your face sort of thing. It's Yeah, I wanted to keep that kind of subtlety there, I guess, may be the better way to say that. So you'll notice, y'all might notice that there are Robin's lines are a little bit thicker at points than the lightning bolts, and that was kind of my reason why. Get the details of his belt here. Now his belt is yellow, and just like with Impulse, I used this Pigma Micron brown for the light skin tones and the any yellow or gold part on Impulse. Doing the same thing here for Robin. The skin tones and the any yellow part, like the buckles on his shirt, the R of his logo, the inner part of his cape, which folds over, the yellow inside part of his cape, and of course the belt, which will be kind of more of a gold. Just getting a few little detail lines here. So as you see with the, like just there, I just did the forearm, the upper part of the forearm has a thicker line, so it has a bolder sort of bring it forward sort of look. But then like that little bit of his bicep, just that little tiny bit of a line, a thinner line there. I didn't need it to be as thick. I'm varying the thicknesses and thinnesses. Thinnesses does not sound right. The thick and thins of my, that's a really weird word to say. I say it in my head all the time, but I never say it out loud. That's where I want to vary things, where there's that basic shape that's going to have a thicker line than some of the more the smaller detail shapes. I will probably go thinner more often than not. And like here with his cape, the inside of his cape, oftentimes I will consider what is further away from the light source. So right where the cape folds, that's going to cast a shadow, so a thicker line. Then that tapers to a thinner line until it curves down below, and then I'm going to have a bit of a thicker line again because that's further away from the light source. So that's another thing I think about when I'm doing my inking. What is something casting a shadow on that part of the line? If it were to go to the final color stage, what's casting a shadow? So there would be a thick line there. And then what is light hitting any part of the object, of the shape, that more than likely will have a bit of a thinner line. And then is anything further away from the light source, then that would be, again, moving towards a thicker line. So it's this thick to thin to thick to thin, depending on where we're at, what's overlapping, and what's closer to or further away from the light source. And as you can see here in comparison to the black part of his cape to Impulse's hair. Impulse's hair is a little bit thicker than Tim's cape lines because Bart's closer to the foreground. So I'm going to want that thickness. So there you can see kind of an example of that thick and thin. On this here, I'm going to be filling in this bottom part of Tim's black cape black, but I'm doing some details, some cross hatching. Not really doing the cross part, but I'm doing some hatching, kind of pulling from the black into that negative space where we'll be putting color. That creates a fade, and that fade gives the illusion of dark to light. Back in the early days of comics, the printing process isn't what we have nowadays with desktop publishing, computer publishing. We can the publishing for comics is infinitely better than what they could do in the 30s, 40s, 60s, 70s, 80s, starting into the 90s. The line art had to be shot with a camera, and then all the colors were done on these different. Each color had to have its own piece of film that would be shot, and then it had to all be seamed together with a 4-color process. That's why you'd see all these little dots on the page. If you look like an old vintage comic, it has a bunch of dots to make up certain colors. That's because they're only using 4 colors, and that's yellow, black, magenta, which is kind of a pinkish red, and cyan, which is kind of this lightish blue, turquoisey blue. And then they use varying degrees of these dot patterns to create, with mixing yellows and reds, or the yellow, magenta, cyan, and black to make all the colors that they would need. It was a much laborious process, but with the artwork they couldn't do like fine pencil rendering very easily. It was much more difficult and probably too costly to produce artwork like that in comics. So it was black and white artwork. A camera could see it, boom, this is black, this is white. So anything that was supposed to be gray in the line art was done through cross-hatching. And that kind of has become a signature style in US comics at the very least, and I think continues to one degree or another with many of us US artists. With technology and being able to draw digitally, art styles are changing for sure, but I think that black and white line art where you have the cross-hatching and stuff is kind of a very classic American style. Not to say that it's not prevalent in present-day comics. I mean, I still do it, so it's but I grew up on 80s, 90s comics, and broke into the industry in the 1990s, mid-1990s. So I like to kind of try to walk that line between the classic style and a modern style. I try to, people say my style kind of has a foot in both eras. Like you kind of, it looks classic, but it still has a modern flavor to it. And that's kind of where I'm trying to stand at this time with my art. And now we're getting into inking Tim's hair. Keeping in mind there'll be the black parts of his hair, where it's the heavy shadow black of the hair, and then what will be filled in with color when we get to the color stage. So I'm keeping in mind the hairline, and then how does the hair pull from the hairline up into the outer part of the hair. And the roots, that's how some of the strands, because we have a big chunk of black hair as opposed to Impulse, where it was much more, his hair is a lighter color, so we're not using as many dark areas. We're gonna have a lot more dark areas in the hair for Robin and for Superboy. But I'm also going to be considering how can I get some of that flow in there, not just one big solid flat black, much like maybe the Teen Titans cartoon, which was a flat black with just kind of like a highlight that ran through the center of it. This is kind of along those lines, but a little different. Want to have some more strands of hair for that flow. Gives a little more detail, and I'm utilizing that thick and thin. There's the main thick of the hair, the contour of the hair, and then some thinner lines to give some wisps in there. And there will be a part here where I fill in the larger chunk of the hair coming from the root up there. You can see that I'm kind of starting to create this delineation between the black and what will be, will be finished with the line art will be the white, but that we will then fill with color when we get to the Copic marker stage, which will be two or three videos from now. After this video, we'll have the Superboy ink video, and then we'll move into coloring starting with Impulse, then Robin, then Superboy. So I'm always keeping in mind, how is the hair flowing to the root of the head? And as we move into the hairline, how can I convey the flow of the roots from the hair, from here, moving into the main body of the black. So I'm keeping a little bit open there so I can drop in some color and kind of create that. 1, texture, 2, detail for the eye candy, and 3, I don't know if there's a third. I think I should just stop at 2. I'm kind of filling in some more black, beefing up those lines where necessary. I'll fill in the rest of that black with the brush pen. And what I'm doing here is I'm thickening up the border of what I'm going to fill in black. I don't want a thin line. It's better for me to have a thick line because then I have a better chance of not going outside of the line when I fill in the black. So now I'm using my kneaded art gum eraser, K-N-E-A-D-E-D, like you knead like bread. You knead it when you do this. You can do that with the art gum eraser, like here. So this is called kneading it. When you stretch it out and smush it back together, that's K-N-E-A-D, kneading it, art gum eraser. You can find these at any art supply store, Amazon, things like that. Try to support your local art store if you can. So I'm pulling off all the pencil lines here, just on Robin now. Need to keep those Superboy pencil lines because still have another inking video to come. Can't get rid of that yet. So get this cleaned up a little bit. Nice thing about the art gum eraser, as I mentioned in the Impulse video, is that it doesn't really fade the inked lines so much. It can a little bit, but not as much as a plastic eraser. So now I'm using my Pentel Pocket brush pen. to fill in the black areas. So I'm going to carefully come in here, and this whole area that is the black part of his hair, just gonna ink that up, fill that all in. And I'll be doing the same with the black parts of his cape. Now the main color of Tim's hair and his cape is black, though I will be coming in with colors that are grayish blue. Gray for the cape and then grayish blue for the hair. Didn't want to use a grayish blue line for the line art for the hair, or just gray for the cape, because then I'd lose the solid black that it should be. So black is the darker color that would go against the marker, the Copic marker gray or grayish blue, as we'll see when we get to that colored video. So that's why I chose black here as opposed to using like a really dark gray, because then it's a dark gray cape, it's dark gray hair instead of black hair. So there we go. The finished inks for Robin. Okay, there we go. There's a finished shot of the inks for Robin. A lot of fun to do, and I hope you had fun hanging out with me, and hopefully maybe you learned something. If you did, please leave a thumbs up for this video. If you haven't subscribed yet, go ahead and hit that subscription button. Maybe set your notifications to alert you when the next videos go up, so you can be one of the first to watch. And feel free to comment and share the video. That kind of support goes a long way, especially for the channel. So I want to say thank you so much for that. Thanks for hanging out with me. Thanks for watching. And yeah, I'll see you next week as we ink up Superboy. And until then, I'm Todd Nauck. Keep on drawing. Keep having fun. Take care. Hi. And I also have links to the first 2 parts of this video series in the video description below if you missed the sketch, I wanted to say sketch, and AKA the third Robin. So I'll be sending, I won't be sending, keep it together. And until then, I'm Todd Nauck. Todd Nauck.